say a little bit today about meditation. It's kind of a broad introduction to meditation. And I'm going to speak at, I'm going to try and keep it at a kind of very practical, down-to-earth level. There are many levels at which we could look at meditation, and I'm today at least going to try and keep it, as I said, very grounded and not get into very esoteric aspects. Meditation itself is a very broad word. If we look at it in different traditions, it probably means something very different in different traditions. And I think almost all of the major Indian religions have some meditative element to it. And if you looked at what meditation means in these different religious traditions, they probably all mean quite different things. If you look at it in the Buddhist tradition also, there are many schools of Buddhism, and in each school they do have a different view of what meditation is. And even if we just look at one individual, when one starts practicing, meditation means something to you. As you move along the path, it means something different. And for example, if you take the example of the Buddha himself, who was an enlightened being, we know that after he was enlightened, he actually spent a significant part of his time in meditation. Now, what meditation meant to him and why he meditated is something, it's not really possible, for me at least, to explain. I don't know. How the enlightened mind works and why the enlightened mind meditates is something one could speculate about, but not something that one could say something about. At least I can't say anything about it with any certainty. So clearly, there is a whole range of meanings to meditation, and there's a whole range of reasons for meditating. And so I'm not going to try and talk about what it could mean as we progress. I'm going to try and talk about what it could mean when we start. And I think, for most of us, we are in the starting phase for a very, very long period of time. So it is a good place to start. It is something which, I think is useful for us where we are right now. And it may not be very useful to speculate about what it might mean in some other tradition or what it might mean when we've progressed a great deal along the path. So what I want to say, the way I think it's useful to look at meditation is to think of it as a practical skill. Meditation is something like learning to ride a cycle. It's something that anybody can learn, anybody can do with a bit of practice. It's not something esoteric. It's just something that can be taught and which can be learned, provided you put enough time and effort into it. And it's also, of course, like any other skill, it's going to require patience. It's going to take you quite a while to learn how to do it, because it is finally a skill. What we are learning to do is we are learning to train our minds. We are learning to work with our minds. Usually what ends up happening is that we end up being the slaves of our minds. We just go with whatever mood we are in. We think, that's the mood I'm in, so I have no control. I got irritated because I was in an irritable mood. Here we are trying to actually work with our mind. We appreciate that we are in an irritable mood and nonetheless respond in a non-irritated fashion. That's really the kind of skill that meditation is trying to teach us. It's trying to teach us the skill of working with our mind instead of simply just blindly being driven by our mind, by our moods. If you ask what exactly the meditative state is like, I think it is a balance between relaxation and concentration. Now, if you use the normal ways in which we understand relaxation and the normal ways in which we understand concentration, it's kind of hard to understand how there could be a balance between the two. Because quite often when we say relaxation, people think it means sort of, vegging in front of the TV or something like that, or having a few beers. And then how can there be a middle way between that and concentration? And concentration is the thing you do when you're writing an exam, right? So what is the middle path between these two? So I think it's important to clarify that when we say relaxation and when we mean concentration, the meaning of these words is slightly different from what we were just sort of understanding, what the normal understanding of relaxation and concentration. So the relaxation over here is an inner relaxation. It is a letting go in the mind. It is kind of a lack of tension in the mind. So the mind is relaxed, but it's not drifting. It's not vegetating. And the concentration that we are talking about is not a fierce concentration, the kind of thing which you try and do when you're writing an exam or whatever it is. Set yourself some very hard task. It is a steady, calm, but clear awareness. That is the kind of concentration that we're talking about. So it is these two elements that we are trying to bring together in meditation. A kind of inner relaxation and inner letting go, a complete calmness of the mind, while at the same time the mind is not drifting around. It is settled on one object. It has a very calm, clear awareness of this object. So, as you can imagine, there's a huge difference between this kind of mind state and the normal kind of relaxation and concentration that we were talking about. So if we were to binge watch a serial or something like that, at the end of it your mind is bloated. You're actually completely out of energy. It's very difficult to do anything if you've spent the last 5 hours binging on TV. But on the other hand, if you have been meditating, it's actually energizing. It sort of releases energy. You can get up from that meditation, you can engage with the world, and you can respond very creatively to whatever situation you find yourself in. Yeah, so that's the one big difference between what normally people think of meditation. When they think of meditation, they think either of this very relaxing state at the end of which you're like a vegetable, or they think of this kind of fierce concentration state. And it's really neither of these two. It is, as I was saying, some mixture of these two, but it is this kind of mixture which is actually energizing. So if you were to take the example of food, you could consider the normal kind of relaxation that we think about, vegging in front of the TV or just watching movies or whatever, as eating junk food. It's kind of pleasant, it goes down smoothly, it tastes good and so on, but at the end of it you feel a bit bloated and sick. Whereas the kind of meditation we're talking about is about, would be in this analogy like eating good, healthy food, a balanced diet. So at the end of it, you're energized. It's actually fed you, right? So you get up from the cushion and you're full of energy. You can engage with the world. It's another kind of middle way also, I think. It is a middle way between getting lost in your experience and being detached from your experience. So if I were to give you an example, sometimes, when you are really, let's suppose we're getting into an argument with somebody. And sometimes your emotions are so strong at that moment that you're completely lost in the experience. You have no control anymore. You just go on saying and responding to things because you're lost in that experience, that emotion has taken over. On the other hand, there are certain situations where, for example, I guess particularly in our society, we tend to get a little bit detached from experience of suffering, I think particularly of suffering of other people, because there is actually quite a lot of it around us. You go to the train station, you see maybe people in begging or something like that, who are in some terrible physical state. Maybe they're, these days it's not that common, but earlier you would see lepers, but you could still see people with amputations, people who are unable to walk, who drag themselves around in some way. And actually many of us have trained ourselves to detach ourselves completely from that kind of experience. We see it, but we are not, there's no emotional sort of contact which happens. We've kind of built a fortress around our heart so that nothing touches us. So this meditation that we're doing is a midway between these two. It is, you are engaging with your experience, you are aware of your experience, you have an open, kindly, friendly sort of awareness of your experience, while at the same time you're not lost in that experience. So it's not like in this argument where you're having, where you are no longer in control, your emotions are in control and it's just dragging you along, nor is it like this situation where, where we've seen this person who's suffering terribly, but we have detached ourselves so completely from it that we have no emotional response whatsoever. It's a kind of middle ground between these two. We have a deep awareness of what is happening, but at the same time we are not overwhelmed by our emotions. So this, I think, sort of is a little bit trying to explain what is meditation. And I think it has also naturally brought us to why do we meditate and what would be, what would be the effects of meditating. So I think, the why of meditating, why one would meditate, and I think that the purpose of meditation, if you want to say. The purpose of meditation, I think, is twofold. It is transformation and it is understanding. And so when we talk about transformation, again, transformation is twofold. I think it's transformation of oneself and transformation of the world. So the transformation of the self, as we were seeing, comes about because of this kind of very calm, steady awareness, this non-judgmental awareness that we bring about when we meditate. We are training our mind to sort of become aware of things, and so we are able to work with our mind instead of being the slaves of our mind. And that is inherently going to transform you. It's going to transform one because you're going to then necessarily develop patience. There's no way that you're going to be able to stay aware of all the things which are going on without developing patience. It's going to transform one also because it is integrating. You can't stay steadily aware of things unless you're integrated in some way. Our normal minds are subject to all kinds of pushes and pulls. There are all kinds of conflicting tendencies which go on in our mind, which make us jump from one thing to another, which make us uncertain, which make us not grounded, because we just are too unsettled. Whereas the meditation necessarily integrates one. It sort of brings all one's emotional pushes and pulls together so that you're working in one direction. And you're working in a direction where you're sort of understanding yourself, you're patient with yourself, and therefore you're necessarily become grounded. You understand your own strengths and limitations, you understand your emotions, you understand your deep habitual habits, and you're able to work with them. And once you're able to work with your habits, you're necessarily transforming yourself. And this transformation of oneself, I think, also necessarily transforms the world. Firstly, of course, it will transform the immediate world around you. If you are a more patient person, if you become a more patient, integrated, understanding kind of person, you will obviously interact differently with people. You will interact differently with all the people that you come into contact with. And this interaction, since it is, now you're interacting differently with all the people you come into contact with, in a small way, it will still transform them. Right? Because everybody responds to the interactions that they come in with. And since your particular interactions are now more understanding, more patient, more skillful in a way, it will necessarily transform the world and the people around you. So that, I think, is one of the purposes of meditation. You meditate so that you transform yourself. You meditate so that you transform others. And this transformation comes about also because of an understanding. And that was implicit in what I said. You understand yourself a little bit better. You understand your own motivations, you understand your own pushes and pulls. And it's because you have understood it that you're able to work with it, you're able to transform yourself. So the transformation requires understanding. It requires understanding of oneself, and with this understanding of oneself, one begins to be able to better understand others. You can understand what motivates other people. If you're able to engage with other people, if you can be more patient with other people, instead of simply reacting immediately to what they say, to the words that they use, you're able to see a little bit beyond them as to what is actually this person wanting, what is actually what would actually be beneficial for this person, what is the way in which I can interact with this person which would be the best for me and the best for that person. So this understanding then gradually expands to the understanding of other people around you. And as I said a few moments ago, that as we understand and interact with people around them, we actually begin in a small way, but nonetheless in a very tangible way, to change the world. Right? We at least change our experience of the world. And so that is the second, I think, deeper understanding that we begin to move towards when we meditate. We move towards an understanding of reality. We normally have this picture of the world as being this fixed outside thing, which which it could be hostile or which could be arranged so that it is not so hostile. We are basically we look at the world as something outside us, and we look at ourselves as something inside. We've kind of broken this thing, reality up into these two halves. There's an outside world which is fixed, and there's an inside self which is also fixed. And you're trying to sort of arrange things so that your inside self is secure in this fixed outside world. That is the normal mode in which we operate. As we meditate, we begin to realize that actually none of these things are fixed. I can transform myself. That thing inside me is not fixed. I don't need things to be exactly like this so that I can feel secure and comfortable. I can change myself so that I can feel secure and comfortable in a wide range of situations. Right? So that fixedness of the self, you begin to realize it's really not that fixed. I actually can transform myself in quite dramatic and quite fundamental ways. And you also begin to realize that the outside world also is not so fixed. As for example, in the example we were talking about interactions with others. When you interact differently with people, they respond differently to you. Right? So in a way, that also is not so fixed. As you change, the things around you also begin to change. And so this sort of rigidity of the outside world also begins to dissolve, and you begin to realize that the outside world is also more plastic, more flexible than you might have earlier imagined. Right? So you get into this deep understanding of oneself and the world, and you realize that none of this is fixed, permanent, unchanging. All of it is actually fluid, flexible, and is something that you actually can do something about. It's not that you are completely powerless. In fact, you probably begin to realize that your mind is the key to this entire experiential situation. The entire experiential situation is completely driven by your mind. Your own happiness, your own suffering is completely determined by your own mind. And so the understanding that you finally move towards, I think, is the understanding that is given in the first, you begin to very deeply understand the things that the Buddha says in the first two verses of the Dhammapada, which are that experiences are preceded by the mind, led by the mind, produced by the mind. If you think and act with a skillful mind, happiness follows. And again, the converse of that, which is experiences are preceded by the mind, led by the mind, produced by the mind. If you think and act with an unskillful mind, then suffering follows the way the cartwheel follows the ox that is pulling it. So I think this is the understanding finally that you move towards, that your mind is the key, and it is the key to your own happiness and to your own suffering.